Good one. All right. Well, Dirk, we have a little bit of time here for our off script. This is the section where,
fortunately, I didn't leave us much, so that's good.
Where Dirk and I throw little things at each other without any preparation. Hopefully, the person throwing it has some preparation. Not really in this case, but okay. This one came to you from a familiar place, the world of politics. I love the world of politics, and I always jump off from that into different things. Okay. Well, the political world and our legal system too is really based on what you could call an adversarial, even a partisan perspective. You know, everybody talks about bipartisanship and cooperation, but really a lot of these systems, the legal system is based on adversarial, prosecutor and defense, right? And the political system is based on that too. Really, this idea that you have these parties and from that will come some consensus, hopefully, eventually. And really, that's built into the fabric of the way the society operates. At least as far as politics and law are concerned. But what about business? That's what I wanted to ask you about today. Is that same ideal work in the business world? I mean, there's a lot of chatter about all the time about how it's advantageous to work together and cooperate, everything like that. But Christopher's article just was a good example of that you just mentioned. But I'd argue maybe that there's as much adversarialism going on in the workplace as anywhere else, and maybe that's bad, maybe that's good. And that's what I really want to hear your opinion about. Maybe you can quickly sketch. I want to give you a couple of scenarios. I want you to quickly sketch, what you think about the yin and yang of how it applies to partnership versus partnership.
Well, I can think of one right off the top of the bat.
I have a few.
Okay.
You can add them at the end, but the first one, management and workers. So where does that fall on the axis of the benefits of partnership versus partisanship?
Well, actually, that's what I was going to talk. One of the biggest issues that came, and I think it may be a little bit less of an issue now than it used to be, but let's talk about unions.
Yeah.
And when you think about typical labor management, if you talk about unions, that was, I should say, traditionally an adversarial relationship. Mm-hmm. I think that has changed somewhat. Mm-hmm. Not everybody would agree with me on that, but I think that has changed somewhat. And my own personal opinion is that at least in that model, the adversarial relationship between management and labor was absolutely deadly. Mm-hmm. I think it was absolutely deadly. And I think the best thing that has happened is when unions started to work with management. Even though
in the early days that was necessary because labor was really taking advantage.
I agree. But it changed. But the workforce, the management perspectives changed, and
they were forced to change.
They were forced to change. But in those industries, and I'm going to say electronics because that's where I came up. Unions couldn't get a toehold, or they had a very hard time getting a toehold. Why? Well, because the electronics company, which fairly new industry at that time. They were already paying good wages, and they had good benefits, and they had nice workplaces, and so on and so forth. So union would come, and I remember unions trying to get into our shop, and everybody's going like, so we're going to pay you how much a month to be a union member, and you're going to give us, and how's that different from what is like? Well, nobody was interested, right?
If the market is efficient, you don't necessarily need advocacy, but if it's not, you do.
Yeah.
That's really
well, and then the problem is that once it's in place, I think the problem is once management started changing, now you've got. People forget a union is a business.
Yeah.
A union doesn't, ideally what a union would want would be for their goal to succeed and for management to be enlightened and without any coercion to treat their employees properly. Right. But if that happened, what would happen to the union?
Right, it'd go away.
It would go away.
Yeah, exactly.
So do they want that? No, they don't want that. Okay.
Let me ask you about another one.
My opinion.
No, I think you're exactly right. Let me ask you about another one, because this is one that's really relevant to what our audience is. Auditors versus auditees. And in this case, what I'm really talking about more broadly is those that develop and implement standards versus those that use them. What are the benefits of kind of somewhat of an adversarial relationship versus more of a partnership in that realm?
Ugh.
I mean, I can see benefits I can see where that would fall on the spectrum.
Well, I mean, if it's the adversarial part of it is, I believe you need to be pushed sometimes in the right direction, even when it comes to standards, is because sometimes there are good ideas out there, and a standard comes along trying to, a process approach, risk-based thinking. Those are good ideas, okay? And sometimes, unless you push them, in other words, I have to be ISO 9000 registered, so therefore I'm going to have to do this with this process approach and risk-based thinking, but those are good ideas. And so being pushed, and I think of that as kind of an adversarial relationship. I'm going to have to do this because you're making me. In that case, I think it's a good thing. the partnership bit, I think you start getting into trouble because if you get too cozy, then it's like,
Well, but what I mean by that more is a broader approach to, is there enough, basically, is there enough user feedback into the standard making process? Are users considered enough? Is it maybe too adversarial?
Yeah, exactly. Some would say no.
Okay.
Some would say that the user isn't considered. I've heard both sides of this.
Mm-hmm.
Some where the user, they wrote this standard. Did anybody really know how a company does business? Right, exactly.
Right.
You've heard that. But I've also heard from the people on the standard side.
We should have Mike McLean on here.
We had Mike McLean on here not too long ago. We've had Denise Robitaille, and I've talked to people who have been on tags, and they say, no, look, we really try to get people from industry either onto a tag or we consult with them, we talk to them, we try to understand what's going on in that industry so the standard does make sense. Does that always succeed? I think sometimes no.
Yeah.
And I think it does evolve over time. I think the ISO 9001 standard definitely has improved from check off the box to now actually, something that makes sense, looking at your process and looking at your risks and opportunities, that makes a lot more sense in terms of how good companies have always been run.
Yeah.
A well-run company has always used a process approach, and they've always looked at risks and opportunities. Now it's just codified in the case of a standard, which shows actually the evolution of the standard, but based on this partnership with industry.
And the
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's interesting that we have this idea in politics and in the legal system, but it also really, even though we think it doesn't, it really applies to business as well, I think is the takeaway there.
Yep.